Welcome back to Workflows and Espressos. This week is something I've been looking forward to for a long time that maybe you guys don't even know this, but I've had you both on my radar for a while. And today I have Tanner Armstrong and Tyler Weir on the podcast. And they are, when I think of like the most talented marketing individuals, these are the top two people that come to mind. And there are so many people focused on marketing in the industry and so much that you can learn and so much that has changed since we all started working together at 360 Blue, what feels like 100 years ago and also 5 minutes ago. And I texted them a couple weeks ago and said, hey, I really want to have you guys on the podcast. I think you could offer so much knowledge to the listeners and the viewers. So welcome. I can't wait.
Great to be here. What an
Thank you
opening.
for having us.
Yeah, no pressure, but we have high expectations today.
Hopefully we can meet them.
Yeah, right. Tyler, you and I started working together in 2015, late 2015. And when I think of my like 360 Blue upbringing, I like don't think that it would have been nearly what it was without your knowledge from the very beginning when I was very new to revenue management, didn't know a whole lot about it. And you kind of took me under your wing with your incredible wife and told me everything that I needed to know about marketing and as much about revenue management as you possibly could. And I feel like we built something really badass. So I can't wait to hear the insights that you have. And we've been working more closely together over the past couple of months, but it's been a while since we like sat down and had a really big brain discussion. So I'm excited.
Too long. Yeah, very, very excited to be here. Yeah, gosh, we go back to Draper Lake, right? On 30A, sitting in that office and just trying to figure out how to fill in occupancy. Do you remember how many homes we had when we were doing all of that? Where were we at?
I think like 200 maybe,
Yeah,
220.
yeah.
Yeah. Left with 650, right? Something along those lines.
Some decent growth. Yeah.
Yeah. And then we've got Tanner and I started in humbler beginnings at Fuddpuckers back in 2010, 2011. And Tanner, you came over to 360 in 2016, right?
That's right, I did. Was also in that Draper office as
Mhm.
we were making that transition. I don't think you guys got the experience of the bee infestation that happened in there as we're taking phone calls, trying to give those guests the best experience possible. But yeah, 2016 it's been crazy.
I forgot about the bee infestation at Draper Lake. Okay, so what have you guys been up to since then? Obviously, we worked at 360 Blue together. You both were at Key Data for a long time, and now you're doing something really exciting. So I want to hear about it. What's up?
Yeah, absolutely. So, yeah, 2018 started splitting time between 360 and key data. And gosh, fast forward to 2023, I had an opportunity, obviously, to depart key and go full time into consulting. And here we are a year later, have been doing it full time and feel like I'm certainly not going to be looking back.
Tanner, same road for you.
Yeah, very similar paths. Left 360 and went over to Key Data. Started working with T in the group over there, and about 6 months ago had the opportunity to jump over full time to Hospitality Labs, which is our company that we're looking at growing and taking to the next level.
Well, as users and customers of Hospitality Labs, obviously had to. I have been thinking over the last couple of months. So, as I've started to grow workflows and espressos, which I was just telling you, and I think I say in every episode, like it's so weird to think that people actually listen to this. But we do have really like weekly listeners. My mother in law, almost mother in law, is probably our number one listener who listens to every
Love
single
that.
episode. Um, and then we have the Robin Kragans of the world and Rachel Alday and all of these incredible people that I look up to so much in the industry that I like strive to just teach one thing to at least once a week. And when I thought about marketing, it is so multi-layered and so much has happened since our Draper Lake days. And you two have really done such an incredible job of keeping up with the trends and staying really plugged into the industry and how we can make sure that we are building the best vacation rental companies possible. And so I kind of want to start with like the fundamentals and really pick both of your brains on what we all need to be doing on the marketing side to ensure that we are setting our businesses up for the highest bottom line possible. And obviously that we're targeting the right audience and we're using the right channels and I don't know, pulling the right levers as I think that that is typically the word that is used. Is that a Jason Sprinkle word or is he like only the supermarket, the widgets? He's a widget guy.
Definitely widgets. Jeremy's, yeah, widgets, umbrellas. Yeah, absolutely.
Umbrella. Yeah. So, what do you guys think is like the fundamental? Where should we start? Should we start with budget? Should we start with building a marketing team? Should we start with setting a strategy? Talk to me.
Yeah, no, that's a fantastic question. Really feel like, you have to start with a strategy, right? Like in order to know where you want to be, 30, 60, 90 days from now, 3, 5 years from now, you have to have, I feel like you have to have that written down, right? In whatever format it needs to be. And so coming up with a strategy, obviously day ones are way different for property managers starting out with less than 10 homes, right? One home, 10 homes versus someone obviously who may be getting into the industry through an acquisition. And so it looks different for everyone, but I really feel like the strategy has to be the start, right? And really breaking it up into, we always like to follow Google's 5 phases of travel, which are dreaming, planning, booking, experiencing, and sharing, right? A more simplified version of that might be the 3 phases of travel: inspiration, research and planning, and booking, right? But building some kind of formula that follows each of those phases and then action items, obviously, that hit each of those phases, I feel like is primary number one, right? Like campaigns for hitting potential guests in the dreaming phase, right? Do I have an email marketing platform? What channels am I going to be on to catch people in the planning phase? Do I have a site, obviously, to hit people and capture bookings? And so kind of following that whole format, and again having all of that written out and following again kind of that phases of travel is something that we typically always start with.
Yeah,
Tyler or
absolutely.
Tanner, yeah, I was gonna ask you, like, do you feel the same way there?
I do. I think before or at step 1A of that strategy is also really understanding what that target audience is that you have. Not only the, "Oh, they're this old," or they're primarily male, female, but also what their interests are, like, what watering holes are they hanging out in that you can leverage to reach them, and how can you reach them, should really play a factor into building that strategy. T Tyler mentioned the 5 phases of travel. He's exactly right. We consider those micro moments and trying to figure out how we can be there and be useful in those different moments to try and not only get new customers or get new guests, but also be able to give them the best experience and the best time possible throughout their stay and even after their stay. So you can start getting those repeat guests.
I feel like this question is so hard to answer for us on the operator side, but how do you know who your audience should be? And then how do you know how to find out who your audience is? And like, what is that gap? Or should there be a gap where you're like, hey, our audience is really this, but it should be this? The audience question is so hard. And I feel like data collection has so much to do with it, and that is just this ever evolving question that everybody seems to be asking is like, how should we be collecting data? What's the right data to be collecting? What is worth looking at and actionable versus what isn't? So talk to me about the audience side of things.
Yeah, really good question. I mean, really, when it comes to building that ICP, right, or that ideal customer persona. I mean, and again, depending on where in the life cycle the company is, I really feel like it starts with leadership, right, or ownership. If they are able to define, what that ICP is, right? Maybe it's a similar persona as themselves, right? Whether that's higher end or more laid back, right? Whatever that criteria is, defining that obviously out of the gate for a company just getting started. I feel like that would be kind of the model to follow. Whereas a company who's already established and maybe they feel like their ICP has transitioned in the last 2 to 3 years. A really good way to identify that are there are data service providers where you can send your CRM database in and they can run an analysis on your CRM and basically come back with a pretty in-depth report to inform you of, hey, like here are the three audiences that you're going after, right? You've got very wealthy seniors, right, or boomers. You've got some like middle-aged households, household income, where they're located, right, and other firmographic type data. And so between the two, again, it depends on where the company's at in their life cycle. But again, kind of going at it based on who the ownership is for an upstart, and then again using some of the various options available to review your website traffic or your CRM.
Mhm. It's interesting. There are things that are as simple as collecting zip codes that I think some people don't fully understand. Like, for example, Airbnb, making sure that those Airbnb zip codes are getting back into your property management system, like, seems like an extra task or annoying, and you don't understand how important it is when you're plugged into something like Key Data that's telling you exactly what zip codes your guests are coming from and how much money is coming from each zip code. And I feel like that's something that we talked a lot about at 360, but when you talk to some operators, understandably so, like there's so much that you're worried about when you're running a vacation rental company that seems like one of the last things on your mind that's so important. When it comes to like budget in general, how do you even approach setting a marketing budget? Obviously, like one thing that you really want to be thinking about is your team and how you build out a marketing team. And I think there's a lot of questions lately around internal versus external and creative versus digital and what that split should look like. And if you even need like both teams and how large your company is. But when you think about somebody that has 50 units with a top line revenue of $15 million, like what should they really be looking at in terms of a marketing team and how big that team should be and how much money they should be spending on marketing and of that spend where it should be going?
Yeah, that's a great question. I think when looking at building a marketing team, obviously you take that strategy that you built, which is obviously like we discussed, is the first thing that you're trying to figure out. You take that strategy, you understand what those action items you want to get out of that strategy are, whether it's increase bookings, let's increase awareness, or let's drive some repeat guests, whatever the goal of that strategy is. You look at that, and then I think the first step would be to find a doer. So go in there if you do make the decision that you need to hire somebody, find someone that can do those things out of the gate and don't really worry as much about that management layer. I think people get caught up in the, oh, I'm a marketing director or I'm a CMO or whatever the case is. I think that first step is to get someone in there that you trust, that understands what you're trying to do and can accomplish that. And then as you start seeing growth from that, then you can start adding in those layers of management and moving things up that way.
Mhm.
1,000%. To echo T, I feel like speed is the best strategy, right? Like you can work for so long to try to make the perfect email or the perfect social media post or the perfect website, but really the priority number one should just be moving forward, right? And moving forward as fast as you can and trying to learn from obviously what's going to the marketplace. In the world of digital marketing, obviously everything can be everything obviously that's things of like a website can obviously be updated in real time. Social media posts, most of them now have the capability of being edited. Emails, you don't necessarily have the ability to pull an email back, but you can always send the next one, right? And so I do feel like one core component to the strategy and the team is speed. And a lot of the companies that we've seen are just quite frankly moving fast, right? And sure, they
Mhm.
might be breaking things, but they're learning, they're iterating, and they're winning.
Mhm. Do you find that the companies that are most successful have larger marketing budgets, or they're just using the money wisely, or like you said, like they're doing more rather than less and like throwing a bunch of things at the wall and seeing what sticks? Like, what do you think stands out in the companies that you work with or have worked with previously where you're like, damn, they do a really good job?
Yeah, that's a really good question. I feel like a lot of the winners kind of have this like 80-20 protocol in place, right? Like 20% of what they're working on is bringing 80% of the results, right? And so I think that's a crucial component, right? Like if your primary traffic is coming from the OTAs, then there's no need to try to replace that, right? Like how do you go all in on that, but at the same time leaving room for experimentation, right? Like you constantly have to be experimenting and trying new channels and leveraging new technology and trying to identify new, well, Tanner referred to earlier as watering holes, right? Like guests are out there. You just have to get in front of them, and there are endless ways to get in front of them.
Yeah, and to add on to that, the companies that are doing well and are able to effectively do those tests and figure those things out are ones that also have the tracking metrics in place to understand where all of that
Mhm.
traffic and where that revenue is coming from. It's happened more times than not, honestly, with a client that we'll onboard that we want to work with, and they don't have analytics set up, or they don't have their Google Search Console set up, or any of those tools to really understand that where the value and where the money is coming from their
Mhm.
site individually. So having that is also crucial and can set you up for success
Mhm.
immediately.
Absolutely.
This kind of leads me into this thought. I'm doing some bouncing around as I do, but well, two things. Number one, I think just 360 Blue, like, put this love and care for KPIs, like, it nailed it into our brains, and so I think the one thing that really, like, set us apart as I look back to, like, this, like, Super Bowl that I felt like we went to and won in a lot of ways, right? It was because we were so focused on data and had leadership that was extremely focused on data, and I've talked about our revenue meetings before. Tyler, the OG revenue meetings that we used to be a part of, that at the time, like, we would prep for 2 days and be so stressed out to go to, but I look back and, like, the learning that we had through those experiences when Jeremy Sprinkle was standing at the I keep wanting to say whiteboard. No, but it was the whiteboard. Yeah, he
That
would
was the
stand at the white.
whiteboard, the head of the conference table. Yeah. Oh
Yeah,
my god.
and he'd make us put our screens on, this is like pre-key data, on the TV and just go through each individual hole in the calendar, and Tanner, eventually you were
Right.
at the revenue meetings too, like, those are the dark days, but also these days where I feel like the importance of data and what we should be tracking and what we should be looking at were like deeply ingrained in us. And we've taken it throughout our career so far. And now it's things like we do have tools like key data that we would have killed for back in 2015. And thank God it exists now. But
That's right.
I I wanna go through, like, some of those really important KPIs, and then I also wanna talk about, like, the audience aspect. How do you even start to target a specific audience? Like, how does that even work?
Gosh, we may need a whole new podcast for that topic. Yeah, I mean, that's golly, having some major flashbacks back to those
Yeah,
revenue
for
meetings. Yeah, I mean, it's a really good question. I think again, it depends on where the company is in their life cycle. But over the years, I think where we've really settled as far as like KPIs to like really be focused on, I guess in its simplest term would just be website traffic, right? Like it's really simple math, right? Like the more people you can bring to your website and the more people you can convert out of that traffic, obviously those numbers look really good. Again, different scenario for maybe someone just getting started who is primarily OTA driven, right? And that's totally fine for that individual, for those companies, as well as companies who are established. Some KPIs that Tanner and I really like are lifetime value, right? And that repeat guest rate, I think is so crucial. No matter what your acquisition engine is, whether it's direct or indirect, you have to be focused on bringing what you've acquired back. And again, it's not a one size fits all, but that audience, your CRM is one of the best assets that you can have as a vacation rental manager. And so those are definitely KPIs that we really focus on and encourage our clients and the rest of the industry to really hone in on.
Hmm. Do you find that the companies that are focused more on like data versus just kind of what they want, right? Like, let's say bookings and occupancy is really important, and you're just focused on putting as much money toward like get filling up your occupancy, and you're spending a lot of time posting on social media. And like when you're making decisions like that to drive occupancy versus looking at your website traffic this year versus last year, or looking at the lifetime value of your repeat guests and guests in general, or the average booking amount, like, do you find that that's typically more successful?
Yeah, so I mean, absolutely. Yeah, I think when talking through like the hey, we're here just to drive more bookings and get more rentals versus the focusing on the lifetime value. I think it comes and we touched on it previously that do companies that spend more budget are they tend to be more successful than those that spend less. Like I think really understanding that hey, we're trying to get bookings for the least amount of money that we can. So
That's right.
if we do have that lifetime value and we are really focused on that, we're gonna be able to fill some of those gaps or those umbrellas as Jeremy would say, a lot more efficiently and cheaper than we would if we were just trying to go out there and just throw money at a digital spend or trying to get new clients in a way that didn't have data that backed those decisions of what we were targeting.
Yeah, that customer acquisition costs, like wanting to consistently get that number as low as possible. And the same is true on the owner side, right? Which is so interesting. Like, we talk about the industry that we're in all the time. Like, we're really servicing two clients. And a lot of times at 360, like, and now we're having conversations about how can we market to homeowners and ensure that we're getting the right type of homeowners, which is a lot of the times the same audience that as your guests, which is
That's
really
right.
interesting. And how can you turn guests into future homeowners? And that customer acquisition cost, I would say, even on the owner side, might even be more important, as you might find yourself spending $10,000 to acquire a property when you really look into it.
Yeah, absolutely. And gosh, that acquisition cost can certainly be well worth it when you look at the lifetime value of that homeowner, right? Especially if you're obviously retaining them year after year. Yeah, I mean, again, there's 1,000 KPIs out there, but when you really boil it down to echo Tanner, you can reduce your acquisition cost by focusing on guest retention, right? And obviously following those phases of travel and putting time and campaign energy into those post stay initiatives can really pay dividends to that repeat guest rate and that lifetime value. And yeah, I mean, I think CAC obviously is a wide topic and certainly is contingent upon the marketplace and the seasonality and all of that. But really taking a look at both of those kind of hand in hand really bring it all home.
Hmm. This conversation about channels is interesting too for a number of reasons. And I feel like one thing that the industry was really moving, I don't know when Book Direct Day started. Was that like 2017, 2018? Like the book direct movement was so much a part of all of our early days in the industry. And as much that was back when it was like pay to play on Verbo and Airbnb wasn't really a thing for leisure markets at all. And our number one focus was brand awareness and driving as many guests to the website as possible. And things have changed a little bit. And like you said, when you are taking 50 or 60% of your reservations through Vrbo or Airbnb or a combination of both, plus Booking and Marriott or whatever channels you're using, do you find that it's still worth it to try to increase your direct booking percentage or put money behind that initiative? Or do you think it is about putting your eggs in both of those baskets and spending less money trying to drive all of that traffic toward your brand and ultimately just taking advantage of the channels that you're on? Or is it a mix of both, which I feel like might be what you say?
Yeah, yeah. No, again, I think you just said it best. Like taking advantage, obviously, of those platforms, their budgets, their marketing budgets, and piggybacking off of that, right? I think Book Direct Day, again, depending on who you ask, I really feel like kind of spun out of this goodwill initiative to educate the consumer marketplace about what is a property manager and what is a platform such as Airbnb and VRBO, right? And I think to this day, depending on who you ask, I think that that messaging certainly can be still muddy, and I don't know if the marketplace that really resonated, but I think it was absolutely worth it, right? Back to our 80/20 conversation, like that was our experiment, right? But
Mhm,
really, like 20% of the efforts that just work year in and year out are these OTAs, right? And so
mhm.
I think really leveraging them. And again, you don't want to be susceptible to an algorithm change on their platforms. You constantly have to be, again, warming up your database and looking for audience growth techniques and trying to bring guests back through your front door. But there's no need to shy away from, or even, in my opinion, double down on direct messaging, right? I think you are if you're on an OTA and you're booking those guests and you're bringing them obviously through your brand, your experience, that backside has so much upswing and potential
Mm,
to win them back, right? And I think that is where a lot of folks really tend to drop the ball, right? And really
mhm.
they're only focusing on acquisition and really not really putting, enough energy and resources into that retention aspect.
Yeah, reinforcing your brand throughout the guest stay and after their stay. And I've seen a lot of people over the last couple of years put their brand logo on televisions and have that in the Airbnb photos, which I feel like has been really interesting to see, and it's led to more brand awareness from the very beginning when a lot of times you've had to wait until the guests check in. And we went through the phase of we used to have the information from Verbo before it was encrypted, and it was this constant learning of like, okay, well, now we're not going to have email addresses, or first we can't have phone numbers, and then before
That's
that
right.
it was our logo disappeared. And it's just this ever evolving, like, how can you ingrain your brand into a guest's brain?
Yeah, that's right. I
Okay.
mean, gosh, these platforms are never going to stop evolving, right? So as a company, you have to continue to evolve, right? And hunt down new channels, channels both for acquisition and again channels for retention, right?
Mhm. I think it's really interesting and worth echoing that they have budgets that are bigger than anything that we could ever imagine at our own individual companies. So taking advantage of that as much as possible is the wisest thing that we can do. And it's never worth trying to compete on the marketing side, especially when they're bidding on your keywords in general. So, Tanner, I want to pick your brain on like the most important methods of communication on the marketing side. So, when you're building out guest engagement and when you're trying to figure out where you should be spending your energy, I'm curious to know like Do you think that having somebody that knows AdWords is more valuable than having someone on your team that can run social media? And if you had to pick one over the other, which one should you start with? Because a lot of times that's what we have to do in the industry, like pick one and then eventually kind of go down the road towards somebody else. Or is email marketing the largest thing that you should really be focused on? So finding that person that is very familiar with email marketing, or is it leveraging your reservations team and calls and text messages and like individual emails sending that we're all too familiar with? What's your opinion there?
Yeah, no, great question. And I think it ultimately depends on what your goals are, A, and B, where you're at in your process. So, I mean, if you're new and just starting out, and your goals are just to get your name out there, then social media is going to be a way to get that brand awareness. You're not going to see as much return financially from that, but it can help grow your brand. Whereas if you're doing Google paid ads, that's gonna be the highest intent. Those people are ready to book, ready to stay. So you'll see an increase there. However, that the brand awareness piece may not be there unless you have a larger funnel down the a larger funnel ad efforts that
Mhm.
can cost a lot more money.
Mhm. Do you agree, Tyler?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it kind of goes back to you had briefly touched on budget. Again, it really, I mean, budgets can certainly be all over the place. The ones that have the highest budgets aren't necessarily the ones that always win, right? I mean, obviously, money can certainly make campaigns go further. But if you're a company and you've got a modest marketing budget, I think if you were to put that on the highest intent and some of the most targeted specific search queries, maybe it's as easy as luxury vacation rentals in San Diego, right? And maybe that's the one keyword, or maybe a slight change from that. And maybe that's the one keyword that you're putting your budget towards. That way, anytime a potential guest is searching for that search query, you're pushing your ads in front of them and doubling down
Mhm.
on that, right? That way, that budget is solely optimized to the highest intent of search demand out there, rather than just leaving it wide open and running it incredibly thin, going up against the OTAs maybe for San Diego vacation rental searches, right? And so getting as niche as you can
Mhm.
with your budget and with some of that intent. And if you don't have a budget at all, I mean, anybody can create content, right? I mean, I think that kind of goes back to the the non-sexy stuff, right? Like doing the boring stuff over and over and over and over again for a long time works, right? Building content for emails, building content for social media, it compounds. Yeah, it's tough because we all want results today, right? Tomorrow, next week, and sometimes that those efforts take a while to pay off, but they ultimately do come around.
Mhm. I think there is, well, number 1, we remember the homeowners that would say, "Couldn't you just post my home on social media, please? Because I really need a spring break booking."
I haven't seen my home on Instagram in 1 week.
Hello and welcome back. Ashley, I'm so excited to have you this week. I can't wait to hear what the In Haven Insight of the Week is. So, what do you have for us today?
Hey, Megan. So, as you know, InHaven is a procurement platform built for the vacation rental industry, and we help hundreds of property management companies representing tens of thousands of listings. And one of the biggest headaches professional property management companies face is managing linens effectively during turns. Fast, accurate sheet changes are critical to keep your operations running smoothly, and any delay can impact the entire turnover process.
1000%. Please tell me, how is In Haven helping property managers solve this problem?
Yeah, so we are huge fans of hospitality grade sheeting, which is designed to make the lives of our housekeeping teams a lot easier. These sheets, if you don't know, often feature a color hem stitch, like a green hem stitch for the queen sheets or gold hem stitch for king sheets. And this allows the housekeeping teams to quickly identify the right size, saving them valuable time. Have you noticed these hem stitches in hotels before? With
I
all the
have
hotels.
not.
Oh yeah, you've got to flip over that sheet and check out that colored hemstitch.
Yeah, it's a brilliant idea because it's not super noticeable to guests, but makes a huge difference in operations, I would imagine.
Totally. What we see is our professional property managers actually take one step further. So they use this color hemstitch, but they also help their teams by selecting white sheets with different patterns for the different sizes. So, for example, a king sheet could have a white on white micro check design. The queen sheets are all solid white, and the twins have a narrow tone on tone white stripe. And so, this approach maintains that clean white look that the guests prefer while making it easy from a visual perspective for the housekeeping teams to easily identify what goes on the king bed versus queen versus twin.
Like, this information is mind-blowing to me, and I can't imagine the time that it saves. I'm like, I wanna go and order all new sheets for every single property right this second. So, for people like me, Ashley, how can people reach out to you if they wanna do this themselves or they wanna learn more about how to implement?
Sure. Yes. Definitely reach out to me at ashley@inhaven.com or visit our website. We really would love to work with all professional property managers and help them streamline their lending programs to improve turnover efficiencies.
Thank you, Ashley. See you next week.
Thanks, Megan.
Oh gosh, I wonder if that still happens, but I have nightmares about that. Like, God, it is weird looking back and thinking through the amount of pressure that was on social media when Instagram really started to become a source for reservations. And now there's TikTok and all the other like things that you have to think about. And obviously, like Pinterest was huge for us and still is something that
Massive.
we try to stay focused on. Like it is wild to think through every single like channel internally that leads to reservations and the fact that owners know about it and are hitting you up every single day trying to make sure that they're as exposed as possible. And then the amount of work that you have to do on the marketing side and on the owner relations side to educate the homeowners into having realistic expectations around those channels and what it will actually lead to on the revenue side. Full-time job.
That's exactly right. Yeah, full-time job, 100%. I mean, but yeah, I mean, you touched on a couple of those channels, and again, there's an even broader list. I mean, a lot of those can certainly go into that experimentation category, right? Like
Mhm.
we're gonna put some time and energy into this, and it's gonna be boring, and it might not pay off for a while, but eventually it will. And the homeowners that are social media hawks certainly understand their positioning. Those platforms are just incredibly visible, right? And so those are just really easy places for the homeowners to monitor. And really, I feel like if it all comes back to revenue, right? Like if you're delivering on the revenue front, why should they concern themselves with how visible is my home? When was the last time they featured my home, right? If you are
Mhm.
delivering on the revenue front and they're getting that consistent monthly ACH and it's about in that same price range that they expect, those that the social media hawks should certainly stay away. And those were yeah, I mean, it gives me nightmares as well, but they had reasons, right? There was obviously gaps in occupancy and, coming up on 45 days from peak summer weeks and they're sitting empty and yeah, I mean, they had a reason to hunt it down and look for it, but we
I'm
took care of
sweating
it.
just talking about it. It really leads into this like trilogy, I think is so important when it comes to bookings in general. And I think there is this common misconception in the industry that that all falls on revenue. And one thing that the three of us have always talked about is that it really is like the three pillars that lead to success in the revenue occupancy, like overall rev par department. And that is the reservation side, the marketing side, and of course, the revenue department of the company. And I am like such a proponent of talking about how those three departments or pieces of the company work together to ultimately lead to higher revenue for everybody. And I want to touch on that about how we've worked together to do so. We used to talk a lot about like marketing audits to ensure that a home was being seen. And we would look at the data and say, like, okay, we have adjusted rates and we know that people are looking at this property on the website. Like we can see the views, but there are no conversions. So clearly we have a rate issue versus we don't have any views on the website here, or we're not getting any inquiries. Like, it doesn't even look like anybody's looking at this home. So how are they going to pick up that umbrella when they haven't even looked at it? And do you still follow that logic there? I mean, of course, things are a little bit more advanced now than they were 10 years ago, but is that something that you still feel strongly about? I certainly.
Absolutely. Yeah, yeah. Of course, I think, it kind of just helps you narrow down and, like, follow that guest funnel to really understand what that issue is. Obviously, the merchandising of a property is huge. I mean, it's
Massive.
all someone has to go off of before making a purchase. So constantly ensuring that everything's up to date, that your amenities are checked, the descriptions there, the photos are up to date and accurate is huge. I think furthermore with tools like Demand IQ that are out there now, you can really get in and versus just looking at a Google Analytics tool where you're saying, okay, we had this many unique people hit the site. They were on here for this long and they bounced. It has to be a photo issue or it has to be a rate issue.
Mhm.
Demand IQ will allow you to go in and understand, okay, this many people hit the site, that this many people requested quotes, and we still got no bookings.
Mhm.
That you can really say, okay, there's the issue. It is in the rates versus, hey, this person got in there, no one's requesting quotes. That's likely going to be a marketing issue. Let's figure out what's going on.
Mhm.
Or even exposing the fact that maybe guests are hitting undated searches, right? And your site's returning no results, and you've got a big hole that you have to figure out how to patch.
Yeah, I think there's so much on the secret shopping side that you can do. I mean, even submitting an inquiry, or let's say you fill out like the request more information link on a website and you notice that there isn't an automated email that gets sent. And so you're like, well, where does that queue even go to? And how long is it taking us to get back to people that have inquired on the website? Not about a specific property, but just about services in general. Let's say they're a potential new homeowner. And I think that secret shopping like uncovers so much. Or viewing a home, and that was part of the revenue meetings that I look back to now, and is something that we do with our team where we'll literally pull up a property just like Jeremy and Jason and Ashley would do to us and say like, "Okay, well this description looks horrible and the lead photo doesn't look great and there is a glitch in where we haven't put a rate to this gap night that's available. So now it's a missed opportunity for us, or the website isn't firing here the way that it needs to be." And I think that the audit side of things is so underrated and there's so much
Yeah.
focus on the rates, and like rates aren't meaningful if nobody's looking at them.
Yeah,
Mhm. Absolutely.
1000%. And even, I mean, I can't remember how many times we would pull the tape chart up and identify what should be, a Saturday to Saturday owner stay. They were staying Sunday to Sunday, and it was impacting both of those weeks, right? So, Megan, to your point, having that gap rule in place to lift that restriction so you can fill in those gaps, major opportunity, right? And a lot of
Mhm.
times goes missed.
Yeah.
Yeah. And there was also times where we would be doing those things and everything from our end looked great. Like, and there was like, okay, well, there's nothing we can be doing. And then we would go and talk to the sales team member and it's a house that's got a pool and it's on the lake and the lake doesn't have a fence. So they're getting a lot of people calling and inquiring on it, saying, hey, we don't want to stay here. We've got young children. We don't want them running into the lake. And that's something that we would never pick up on if we're not relying on that sales team to give
Mhm.
us that invaluable feedback that they're hearing directly.
Yeah. Sentiment on the phones, oh my god. Like, that is something we used to ask multiple times a week, and like you said, we'd get, "Oh, well, this is too far from the beach access, so everybody wants to book the house that's 3 houses down." "Oh, okay. Well, we need to, like, make huge adjustments on the revenue side, rate side, and also on the marketing side." And, yeah, I agree. Or, like, every single person that's calling in wants a 15% discount. And that was really interesting, figuring out how, and I think a lot of people now on the luxury side are still thinking about this, like, how can you offer something enticing to a guest that doesn't cheapen your brand? And that is, like, the million-dollar question that we're always trying to figure out.
It really is, and yeah, I mean, going back to those meetings in homes that were on that short list, and digging back into the leads and seeing that that week had three other inquiries, right? I mean, yeah, granted, the last one may have been 60 days ago, but seeing that we had a bird in the hand, right? Like if we had just accepted that 10%, 15% off, that week would have been filled, right? And so I
Yeah.
do think that it's important to publicly, like, you don't want to cheapen your brand publicly with all weeks must go language, right? Yeah, I mean, no one wants that. But when a guest is a hot lead, they're on the phone, they're ready to book right then and there. You have to be willing to take what you get, because
No.
otherwise you may find yourself 2 weeks out that homeowners combing social media, starting to seek out when was the last time my home was featured. Why are these weeks not filled up? Maybe by then you're having to drop rates significantly. So really, again, it kind of is a holistic approach.
This is so good. I'm so glad that we're talking about it because I've talked a lot on the revenue side. So to have the two of you here to speak on the marketing side is really exciting. And one thing that I really want to talk to both of you about is tech. And I was saying before we started recording that anytime I'm thinking about like the latest tech or what I should be using or how to make my day more efficient, I think of the two of you. And Tyler, I think I even texted you like 6 months ago, like, what are you using right now? And you have introduced me to Shift for my emails, which I use Superhuman now. And Tanner, we were talking and you were using something recently. What's it called?
Oh, is it Arc for browsing?
Yes.
M
Yep.
my Yeah, the Arc web browser, I love it. It's, especially if you have a ton of tabs that are running everywhere, you can kinda just put those in own different browsers and without having to log out, log back in, and
I'm
do all
running
those things, which
it's
is
Arc or Art.
Arc, ARC.
Okay.
Mm,
I'm gonna look into it.
mm.
You told me to, I didn't. Now we're gonna talk about it. So I want to talk about tech, like personal tech, like what y'all are using to make your days as efficient as possible. And then I want to talk specifically marketing tech too. Like what social media scheduling tools are you loving? What email marketing tools are you loving? Anything that I'm not even thinking about, which is usually the case for both of you. So Tanner, talk me through your tech stack right now.
All things AI for
Yeah, right.
sure. Obviously, using GPT and Claude and trying to understand how those work together. Day to day, we're a HubSpot shop, so using that quite a bit for making sure that our tasks are getting done and everything. ClickUp. We live inside ClickUp for task management. I think it's been incredibly valuable for us and keeping things
Massive.
aligned, especially when you have a bunch of different clients that are within different companies. It gives you the ability to segment that out and push certain tasks, certain
Mhm.
action items, progress on certain things to them so they can understand what's going on and keep up to date. So
Of course.
Arc, yeah, of course, it's just the web browser that I use. I love it. I also they did just launch something where they don't whenever you're Googling anything, like, they're not pulling in any paid ads. So you're getting to see the true results, which can be really, really helpful in
Perfect.
identifying kind of those organic rankings and things that you're trying to look into without
Slack.
getting
You
in the
both
club.
use Slack, right?
Love Slack.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Yeah.
I mean,
And
gosh, before Slack, I guess it was Skype, right?
I cannot believe that. Truly. It's wild to
Insane.
think about that, and I always forget that Slack sold to Salesforce, but I've been seeing a lot of Dreamforce content this week, and Slack is, like, a huge part of that, and I just, like, keep forgetting. Yeah, I'm a HubSpot gal now, the transition from Salesforce, love HubSpot. Superhuman, which I've been loving for email. You guys are both Gmail people, right? Neither of you use Superhuman?
Correct.
We don't.
Yeah,
Yeah,
you'll
we
have to pry Gmail out of my cold dead hands, honestly.
Yeah, I mean, any alternative, I don't know. It's kind of like the equivalent on the mobile side, right? Android versus iOS. Like, just don't think you could ever take Apple away from me.
Yeah. Yeah, what are you using in your personal tech stack right now, Tyler?
Yeah, really good question, and again, worth another podcast solely. I mean, gosh, on the social media front, you mentioned scheduler. Really, if your primary channels are Meta, right, Facebook, Instagram, there's nothing wrong with using the Meta Business Scheduler. But if you go beyond that, a really cool product out there is called Hero Post. Kind of an up and coming when it comes to social media management and scheduling, but really cool brand. Another product on the AI side, obviously, we're power users. I'd like to think when it comes to Chat GPT is Koala. Again, one of those AI content writing engines seems to be pretty strong quality first drafts, right? Like, don't want to lean into the first version that comes out of the gate, but really good solid first drafts. And then I'd say another really good piece of tech to look into is one called Ditto, Dito. Basically, they allow you to create one spec of social media content, and then in like one click, they'll take that same design and recreate it for all these other channels. So, massive time saver.
Mhm.
And again, for all the content creators out there, certainly a fun one to play around with.
Mhm. What do you think on email marketing in general? Like, have you abandoned MailChimp altogether? Is that like so 2015, or is that still people still like it, or Brevo, or what are you guys liking?
Yeah, I wish I could say that something better has come along. I know that there are some up and coming solutions that are even industry specific, but you know, Mailchimp and Brevo are certainly the ones where we're spending a lot of our time in, and they just work. Quite frankly, obviously,
Yeah.
there's a big nice wish list that comes with that, but they certainly continue to remain a very important part of the stack.
Okay. Well, that's unfortunate news. I was hoping that you were going to say something different, but we can't have everything in one podcast, I guess. Tanner, what's your favorite? Like, what are your favorite things that you're using ChatGPT for right now? Anything that is life changing or people might not know about, or all just normal stuff? Do you have the app?
Oh, I've got the app. I don't use the app as much as I do the desktop application. Really, nothing crazy outside of I find it to be really useful in if I have an idea or something or something that I want to expand on further, I can prompt it to kind of help me talk through it without bugging Tyler or you or whoever
Yeah.
about it before I'm ready to then present that or say, okay, here's exactly how we're gonna go about getting this done. So really almost as just as an engine to bounce back and forth my ideas and really help me determine and define what I'm actually trying to get out of that idea or out of that plan. It's been super helpful for that.
That's right. Yeah. To add on to that, I saw somebody post on X that AI is actually affordable intelligence, right? And I
Yes.
mean, think about how deep and accessible that an intelligence is, right? Like, I mean, I really like the way that they had positioned that.
I'm like, the one thing, and this is probably user error, but my desktop and my app don't talk to each other. So I'll be like, do you remember when we talked about this? I'll talk to it like it's a person and it'll say, like, no, I don't remember that. And then I'll realize it was like a query that I had put in through my desktop, but I have the same login. Does this happen to you guys? Is it a me thing?
I'm pretty primarily on desktop for anything work. If it's something crazy or if I'm trying to show someone at the bar that's never seen it before, I'll do it on the app. But other than that, uh, it's all desktop for me. So I haven't experienced it.
Try it out and see.
I
Tanner or
will.
Tyler, do you use the app too?
I don't. It's just mobile browser for me.
Man, I am
It
all up in
it sounds like I've got some
ChatGPT.
homework.
Oh, yeah,
Art,
paid
art,
version with the app,
and yeah.
and the app I don't even honestly, unless I wanna look up, like, something very specific about a location, I solely use ChatGPT as, like, my browser almost. Like, I bet my Google searches have gone down, like, 90%. It's wild to think about, but
I
every
believe
time Clark's always like, "You're giving the government all your info." He's, like,
it.
so weird about
It's too late
ChatGPT.
for
I'm
that.
like, yeah, right? He's like, "You need to be using DuckDuckGo." I'm like, I don't think that they really care that I'm asking it about, like, wedding dress alterations.
Is
Okay.
ChatGPT a good wedding planner?
Yes. Yeah.
Interesting.
ChatGPT is a really great wedding planner. I mean, the things that I ask it, or oh, literally, what was I asking it about last night? Or my sister asked me this morning, hey, can I get bar stools for my house that are leather? Or should I not do that since my kids might sit in them with wet bathing suits? And I was like, did you ask ChatGPT? And she hadn't. And like, that's something that I normally would have Googled. And Google does have the AI like insights now, which I find to be helpful. But ChatGPT is so much easier and like gives alternatives and says like exactly what would happen to the leather. And then it also starts talking like me the more that I use it. So it'll be like, oh my God, like Megan, great question. Here are some alternatives as I know that you usually like to like stick with what you like and you want to try. It's so weird. Or I'll ask it something about my dog and it'll say like, I'm sorry to hear that Sage is having a stomach ache. Oof, it's wild.
There you go.
Yeah,
Affordable intelligence.
exactly. Y'all, I've had so much fun today. Thank you so much for being here. I want to talk just TLDR very quickly on a couple of actionable tips if we said a lot and talked a lot, or there were things that kind of went over heads, which I could understand as we kind of took a trip down memory lane. What do you think are the main takeaways from overall like marketing strategy and budgeting and audience? Like if you had to wrap it into like three key takeaways, what would you say?
Yeah, I'd say first is have a strategy. Get you a strategy from that. I'd say you need to understand who your target audience is. Be sure to add tools like Google Search Console and Google Analytics to your site to help you understand that. Even if you're not ready to take action on it now, it'll be very helpful down the road when you are ready to have someone take that next step. So be sure to have that. And then in where to find those watering holes of people, what we didn't touch on it, but don't be afraid to piggyback off of your local DMO. Like we talked a lot about the OTAs having a much larger budget than we do as vacation rental managers, but so does your DMO. And your
Mm,
DMO is there to help drive that tourism. So don't be afraid to use them. Try and understand what markets they're going after. Understand to help you understand where your guests are coming from and where you can start focusing some of your efforts when you are ready to take that step. And same goes for the direct flights. Like look at the direct flight patterns coming into your area if it's a spot that offers it to help understand kind of what those markets could be that you could get a jump on to beat your competition.
mhm. Tyler, what do you got?
Gosh, how do I follow that? Perfectly said. I think one addition would just be again back to the 80/20, right? Like 20% of your marketing efforts will drive 80% of your results, whether that's OTA, right? Indirect or direct. Don't hesitate, don't sweat it if you are heavy OTA, right? But constantly be experimenting with alternative channels, even if they do have a longer payoff period. It's the internet is a big place. And to echo Tanner, like there are watering holes to find guests and homeowners out there in many different areas. And so you have to have, again, some of your resources, again, whether it's time or budget dedicated towards experimenting.
I think two things that I wrote down while you guys were talking. One was finding a doer, and I think that that is so underrated. And there is so much to be said about finding someone on your team that is just willing to learn and step in wherever and take on any hat, whether it's in marketing or any department. I That really resonated with me. And then speed being the best strategy. I have a coworker who says all the time, done is better than perfect. And at first I kind of struggled with that, but I do think that when it comes to our industry in general, like travel does not slow down and we have such a resilient industry and we constantly have to be evolving. And Tyler, I remember you telling me one day when I was doing everything manually, like I was counting literally on the tape chart occupancy, and you were like, Megan, one day, like this will all be automated. And I remember thinking like, there's no chance in hell. And also, what am I going to do with my life? And you were always like, learn as much as you possibly can because there is one day where like a lot of your job will be automated. And it turned out to be one of the best things that ever happened, right? But it's so true. Like things are consistently evolving at such a rapid pace. And so speed is the best strategy. You said that earlier, and I loved that so much and couldn't agree more. So, for anybody that has additional questions for the two of you or could use some help on the marketing side, I'd love to get people in touch with you and your company, Hospitality Labs. What is the best way to reach you?
Yeah, I mean, they can reach out to us directly on LinkedIn or our website, hospitalitylabs.io.
And I'm assuming you're taking new clients. Hopefully, yes.
Always, always. No slowing down on our side of the house.
Incredible. Well, as a customer of Hospitality Labs, we couldn't be happier. And we've seen for a lot of our businesses as that we've under the Outpost Group umbrella, we've got several companies and you guys have just been so great to work with. And it's also been really exciting to reunite in a different way. Thank you so much for being here, both of you. I would love to do this again and get even deeper eventually. But yeah, thank you so much. And I'm excited for next week's episode. Tanner and Tyler, see you later.